use stock images or photos from Google for my business? First of all, those are two distinct questions. When it comes to Google Images, the short and sweet answer is that you cannot and should not copy or download an image that you find on Google and start using it in connection with your business in any way, whether it's as a background on your company website or a graphic in your company's advertisement, or even as a shared photo on your company's Instagram account. To be very clear, just because an image pops up in Google image search results does not suddenly mean it is in the public domain or that it's lost its copyright protection. Now, if you're working with stock images, you're starting to get on the right track, but we need to dig a little deeper. For the avoidance of doubt, just because something is labeled as a stock image does not mean that it's free to use, and not all licenses are created equal. I've had clients who've run into issues when an employee or an independent contractor that they've engaged to create content or ads knew well enough to license the image, but they purchased the wrong license type. There was no malicious intent there. Rather, for example, they got a license for personal use when it really should have been a commercial license that allows for wider distribution or sub-licensing, depending on what the business needed, but they selected the cheapest option without fully understanding the differences or the business's goals for the final work product. Unfortunately, ignorance of the law is generally not a defense, and this type of mistake can have consequences. And here's where things get complicated. There are companies out there who I'm choosing not to mention by name because of their affinity for threatening frivolous lawsuits, whose entire business model is based on scouring the web for these kinds of potential violations. It costs them next to nothing to send their standard forms of demand letters with escalating threats to sue and asking for a settlement fee to make the problem go away. Many business owners I work with feel like this is harassment and coercion, and at minimum, it can be a huge distraction, especially for businesses that have a lot of online content. But these companies persist because they only need a single settlement payout to cover the cost of 1,000 nastygram emails. So what's the solution? Before using any images, it's crucial to make sure that you have the right kind of license for your business needs. That means reading the fine print, or better yet, asking your lawyer to take a look. A commercial license might cost more upfront, but it can save you from a legal headache down the road. Keep a file of these licenses internally and strictly require any independent contractor to provide proof of adequate image licensing as a condition to payment. I can't begin to tell you how many times a client has been so certain that they got the right license at the time, they just can't find a record of it anymore. And if you're working with independent contractors regularly, you may want to create a form agreement that requires them to indemnify the company, that is, to be held financially responsible, in the event that they botch the licensing in the work that you buy from them. And if you've already gotten one of those nasty demand letters that I mentioned earlier, don't panic. I'm exercising some restraint in this video as far as what I think about their business model and how I think those letters should be handled, particularly when the accusations are without merit, which is actually the case way more often than one would hope, enough to make me wonder if their mistakes are actually in good faith. But it's worth getting some quick legal advice to figure out what your next steps should be and whether or when it's necessary to negotiate or respond. But the best way to avoid any legitimate accusations of copyright infringement or misuse, as well as to quash any legal threats you receive from companies that take the scorched earth, pester everyone who's used the image, even legitimately approach, is to make sure that your photos are properly licensed from the start. Business owners, how do you source the images you use in your business, and what questions about copyright protection and ownership rights do you have?